Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. This may sound like a silly question, but do you ever wonder why we have physical pain? I mean, after all, physical pain sucks. It hurts. It's painful. I remember once slamming my thumb into my car door. I closed my door, and my thumb didn't get out of the way, and it got squished. I was okay, but there was a lot of physical pain at first. I had a friend of mine who used to get migraine headaches, and they were really bad. And she told me one of the main things that people want to do when they have a migraine headache is cut off their head. They're that bad. I mean, of course they're not going to, but she was just using it as an example of how painful they were. We've all, I'm sure, gone through life where something physically painful happened, and we think, why is this happening? This is terrible. It's awful, and it's painful. But believe it or not, there really are some benefits to physical pain. The first and perhaps foremost importance of physical pain is it's telling us something's wrong and we need to do something to change whatever is happening in our bodies. For example, a friend of mine recently started having chest pains and there was also pain in his arm. So he went to the emergency room and thankfully he got there fairly quickly and it was a heart attack and they were able to save his life. But if he hadn't had that pain and gone to the emergency room, he would be dead right now. Or how about the people we know, and I know we know people like this, that had some form of physical pain. And again, they go to the doctor and discover they have some form of cancer or tumor growing in their bodies. But thankfully, because they were able to find it early, they were able to get treatment, get better, and they're doing well now. So the pain is there as a warning sign that something's wrong and something needs to change in order for the body to feel better. And once we realize what that is, we can make the changes, get ourselves in a better place, and the pain usually goes away. Now, the second way that pain is helpful is as a reminder not to do something again, or at least be a lot more careful. My nephew, who I've talked about before in a previous podcast, used to do a lot of skateboarding. Well, one day he broke his leg while skateboarding, and it was a bad break. And it took a long time for his leg to heal. His leg did heal, and though he could have gotten back into skateboarding the way he was before into it, he decided not to because of the pain. The pain taught him that it was time to stop doing some of the tricks that he was doing as they were dangerous and caused him a lot of suffering. So in many ways, pain is our teacher. It's telling us, don't do that. Be careful. Take care of this. It's time to make changes. Pain is there to communicate to us that we need to do something different. And I believe mental, psychological suffering is really the same. When we are struggling in life and things aren't going well, we're depressed, we're anxious, we're upset, we're angry, we're nervous, we're fearful. When we have emotions that are causing us to stress, that are causing us to suffer, they're there to teach us something needs to change. There's something wrong. We often think suffering is there to punish us, but I actually believe suffering is there to teach us. Let me use an example that I've seen many, many times. Let's say a couple gets married and they're very much in love and the husband really loves his wife, but he focuses on his career or other things in his life because he loves her, but these other things are important and he's trying to be a good provider to the family. Well, years later, she decides that she doesn't want to be with him anymore and has filed for a divorce. So, he's at a crossroads now. One thing's going to happen. He is going to be suffering. His wife has left him, who he loved deeply, and now he may have to pay child support, alimony, and even see his kids less. He's going to go through a difficult time. He is going to suffer. But how long he suffers for is really up to him. Will he learn from this suffering? Will he grow from this suffering? Will he make changes in his life from this suffering as a way to improve his life going forward? Or perhaps, sadly, he may get really angry about this suffering. He may blame others for his suffering. He may turn to drink or drugs to numb his suffering. He may make choices that make his suffering even worse. The suffering is there to tell him that something is wrong. When we suffer, that suffering is telling us something is not right. So we can look at the suffering and say, okay, suffering, what do you have to teach me? What can I learn from this? In this man's case, he may say, okay, I get it. I worked a lot. I was neglectful of my wife and our love for each other, and that caused her to fall out of love with me. Going forward, I'm not going to do that again because I want to be with someone as long as possible. And in order to do that, I need to learn about being there for myself and being a good partner to my future wife if I decide to get married again. And I'll do that by learning skills, by changing my habits, and going forward by making different choices so I won't end up here again. Think of it this way in regards to physical pain. Let's say for whatever reason, when we go downstairs, our legs are a little wobbly and we trip and sometimes we fall and we get injured. So because we know that can happen to us, what we do is we may take the elevator when we go downstairs, or we'll hang on to the railing when we go downstairs, or we might even get someone to help us because as we're getting older, we now need help going downstairs. We make changes to adjust to the physical pain of falling because it hurts to fall. It's like that in life. It hurts to suffer. When we're emotionally suffering, it is very painful, but it's there to teach us to do something different, not to numb it. We have to be super careful of that one because a lot of people just numb the pain. I don't want to feel it. It'd be like the person keeps falling down the stairs, but now they're taking fentanyl or morphine to live with the pain because it's so physically painful because they keep falling down the stairs. We don't want to do that. We want to learn from the suffering. We want to learn from our pain and make different choices and grow as a human being because the suffering's there to teach us. It's there to say, hey, something's going on here and we need to make some changes. Now the tendency is to think I need to change the situation. My husband has divorced me and I'm going to do everything in my power to get him back. Some things, often many things externally, we cannot control. But the good news is there's a lot of things that we can do internally to make major changes to alleviate the suffering that we're going through. And that's what I want to take time to explore today. How do we learn from the suffering? 1. And number 2, how do we make changes to alleviate the suffering? 2. Let's say, for example, we're working at a job that we really just don't like. But for whatever reason, circumstances, life events, choices that we made, we did not go to university and now we don't have a college degree and we have very limited choices on what we can do for a job. And so we're in this job that we just don't like. So we ask ourselves, okay, I'm suffering because of this job. What can I do to change? Not what can I do to change the past, because who can change the past? I can. Can you? I mean, when my nephew broke his leg skateboarding, he can't go back and undo that. His leg was broken, period. So wishing for a different past is a waste of energy. We cannot change the past. But what we can do is learn from the past and make different choices going forward. So perhaps we say, you know what I'm going to do? My local community college offers classes at night. And I hear the state school can get scholarships for people that are older that want to go back to school. I know it may take me a while, perhaps 16 years. But in 16 years, I could get my college degree. That's a solution to our suffering going forward. Another one might be, okay, I know I don't like my job, but I really do like the people I work with and the customers are enjoyable. I just wish I made more. So perhaps if I lowered my expenses, did things that didn't cost so much, and just did things that were free but enjoyable, like going for a walk in a park nearby after work every day and really breathing in that fresh air, doing things that bring me joy, like going fishing, or just reading a book when I get home because I find that so enjoyable. So what we focus on is to alleviate the suffering by making different choices going forward. Sometimes it's the attitude at which we're seeing things that can make a huge difference. Seeing a cup half full or half empty is a very different way of seeing that cup. We can make subtle changes, small changes that begin to improve or alleviate our suffering. We can learn from our past and say, okay, this is what I've been doing. I keep doing that and I keep suffering. It's time to make changes and perhaps even get help. Join a support group that's also trying to change. And I can get involved with them because they can help me get better. So life, when suffering comes, isn't about what did I do wrong. It's about oh, this is an opportunity to grow. This is my body, my soul telling me something's wrong, which I agree, I know something's wrong, and I need to do something about it. And the great news is there's so many different things we can do about it. We're now approaching almost 400 podcasts on happiness, how to be happy. That's a lot of different things we can do to be happy. So we begin to study these things that people do who are happy, who life is working for them, and we emulate them. We make changes. We find things that truly work for us and move in that direction. And what will happen is the suffering will begin to abate. We'll find that when we wake up in the morning and when we go to bed at night, we'll say, that was a good day. Thank you. And it isn't that necessarily the circumstances have to change. Often, we just need to change the way we see things. Because I think there's a real tendency to say, well, if my wife takes me back, then I'll be happy. Well, if I get that promotion, then I'll be happy. We need to stop that. The externals are actually irrelevant when it comes to suffering, in the fact that they're causing us to suffer. What's causing us to suffer is the way we're interpreting those external events or trying to control them. Our boss fires us. He or she probably is not going to take us back, no matter what we do. We now need to adjust to, okay, I need to find a new job, find something else to do. That's where we have control. There's a lot of things externally we actually do not have control over. But what we do have control over is our response to what's happening. If in our history we have a tendency of making choices that have led us down a path of suffering, what we have control over is going forward, making different choices. Let's say we come home every night, turn on the news, and listen to it for hours, and we realize as we're listening to it, we're getting more and more depressed. What we can do is stop that and do something different going forward. So the suffering is going to be based on the past and what's happening right now in regards to what did happen. The good news is we can change that. We can make different choices going forward, and we keep making different choices until that suffering is alleviated. Now the final thing I think that catches us so is we just don't want to suffer. But the truth of it is, it's like physical pain. We are going to bump into things in life. It's just part of living. So instead of getting upset, getting mad about the physical pain, we make choices to not do that again, to learn from it, to make different choices if we can. It's the same way with suffering. There are things in life that are going to happen that are going to cause us to suffer. But what we do is we come up with plans to make it better, to improve our lives, and to begin to see suffering not as a bad thing, but as something that we can learn from and grow from. It's there to teach us. It's there to help us. And when we see it that way, instead of trying to numb the pain, we say, thank you, suffering, for being there. I'm going to now make choices that cause you to be less, because I know I'm making choices that are causing me to suffer. And I'm going to do things to alleviate that suffering. And when new challenges come, I'll do the same. It's not that we're constantly facing suffering, but life is impermanent. Life changes, so there are new challenges. And they're less daunting, they're less overwhelming when we see that, oh, I have something to learn. Oh, I have a way I could grow. Oh, I have a way I could do this differently to alleviate the suffering I'm feeling. And when we do that, we'll find that life then becomes a wonderful adventure. Instead of a horrible tragedy, life truly can be beautiful. Every day, we just have to stop fighting the suffering and instead learn from the suffering, grow with the suffering, adjust to the changes that the suffering is indicated to us we need to make. And when we do this, we will find that life truly is a beautiful adventure. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to happinesspodcast.org. And until next time, accept what is, love what is.